Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is going to be a little brief guide on LingBaneMuta against Terran. And I know there are a lot of people, I've seen it all over Reddit with the free-to-play and people coming back to the game. They're saying, I don't see much LingBaneMuta anymore. Terrans are just doing stuff and Zergs are doing stuff, and it seems like Muta is not part of the meta. Well, the good news is you're not bound by what the pro players are doing right now. It might be the case that Hydra LingBane at the highest levels of play is a little bit safer and simpler to use against Terran than LingBaneMuta, but LingBaneMuta is still a perfectly viable approach to the matchup. This was a game that I played earlier today that was pretty textbook. Everything was really crisp and clean. So I'll go through the build. I went hatch first, and that's after going for a 13 Overlord. So I went 13 Overlord, and then 17 hatch, 18 gas, and then a pool at 17. So just a basic hatch gas pool opening. Nothing super fancy there. I'm continuing to drone up, and one of the things that's a fact of LingBaneMuta is that all of the units that you make in that composition are high damage, they're fast moving, and they're fragile. So it can feel like a really dicey way to play because you could potentially lose your stuff to a mine shot. But if you understand how to divide your forces appropriately, it's not as big of a deal. You can kind of divide and conquer as opposed to use everything in one clump. So what's one of the most important things with LingBaneMuta? The first key thing is to have a good economy. LingBaneMuta is a very expensive composition. Generally, you want to have at least 70 drones. If you're a lower level player, maybe shooting for 60 will be pretty much fine. But as you get better and better, it costs 100 minerals, 100 gas for every Muta. Zerglings require a lot of larvae, so you really want to get that economy going. So the main idea is, in the early game, you're trying to push drones as fast as you can. And in the mid game, you're making Lings and Queens to defend early pressure and making a big swell of Mutas to control the air and to really shape the game. So I use 4 Zerglings and my Queens to deflect the first Reaper. This is kind of like a fun mini game in every ZVT. Pretty much regardless of your build, this relationship exists where the Reaper's trying to get some scouting and maybe try and kill a drone or two. The most important thing is to not lose drones in this stage. I went out and I snuck a third base. That's not super crucial here. You could make another couple Queens instead or go Overlord speed. Those choices aren't the most important about this. The key thing is slamming out those drones. So you see here I have 4 drones in production, 2 Queens, 5 drones now in production, and a third base. It's a race. Think about the early game. If you're not actively attacking the opponent and making army, you should be racing them for economy. So in this economy race, the Terran has 27 SCVs, I have 32 drones. There are 2 mules as well, which means Terran is getting a little bit more mineral income from those. I'm going to continue making drones, and then I'm going to continue making drones. And a lot of people will be like, well, are you scared that the Terran's going to attack you? Not particularly. And the reason I'm not scared is because I'm making Queens constantly anyway. Well, why are Queens good to make if you're unsure of what's going on? Queens are sturdy for defense, they have lots of HP, they can attack air at a great range, and they can also fight ground. They can spread creep, they can inject your bases. They're kind of like the all-around defense unit for early game Zerg, and they only require minerals. So if you're unsure of what to do, if you're unsure of what the Terran is doing, making a bunch of Queens can allow you to respond to a lot of different stuff. The main downside is Queens are very, very slow and kind of bad off creep. So you want to emphasize defense, lots of creep spread, and filling vision with overlords around your creep spread. So you see the mini-map right now. There's an overlord in the dead space next to my main, kind of here on the left. There's an overlord down here, in front of my creep at this ramp. There's an overlord here, in front of my creep by my third base. So I'm kind of creating a field of vision around my territory So if an attack comes in, I can move my pieces and block it. They might go into my main. I can send my queens and my lings. They could go to this base, and I could send my stuff over here and defend. So I did get a nice little pickup of the Hellions with Lings. I will show you that micro and explain it. So Zergling versus Hellion is a really tricky matchup. Zerglings are faster than Hellions, but Hellions deal bonus damage to light units, and they deal splash. So they can kill a bunch of Lings very quickly if they're moving correctly. My goal here, I'm going to slow it down. My goal with these Zerglings is to surround the Hellions. If I just attack move, the Lings will fill the backside of the Hellions and try and attack there, but then the Hellions can keep driving and shooting. I want to prevent them from driving and shooting, so look at this move command. I gave my Zerglings a movement command, not to where the Hellions are, but to where the Hellions want to go to dodge my Ling attack. So I'm move commanding here, and then once I've surrounded, then I attack move, and I get a perfect surround here. So the Hellions can't escape, they can't do that much splash to me because I'm evenly surrounded around the Hellions. And when something like this happens, where you deal big damage, fact number one, you have map control. You just killed 400 minerals worth of stuff. That's the amount that a command center would take. That also could have been a bunch of Marines. Those could have been hellbats potentially. So I'm safe now. So what do you do when you're safe and you want to play LingBaneMuta? You drone. You drone until you get like 70 or 80 workers. So I took a Bane Nest, one Evo Chamber for Carapace, and a Lair. And I'm injecting my bases, I'm spreading creep. If you do have a bunch of units, you might as well do something with them. In certain cases, they would have tons of army. Just retreat. These Lings don't need to die for no reason. If you can get a good fight, then take a good fight. But if you can't, then fall back and maybe take watchtowers. Just sit at the watchtower. Or sit outside their base so you can see when they move out. Zerglings are super fast, so you can move forward and back on the map pretty much unpunished. Nothing is going to catch Lings. That's pretty awesome. So I have my third going. Notice that I don't have gases here. And I don't have a gas here. And I don't have a gas here, but I'm going Mutas. Why would I do that? Why would I not take a bunch of gas really fast if I want to go Mutas? Well, to be able to support Muta production, it costs 100 minerals and 100 gas. So they're actually even between minerals and gas. So I want a lot of minerals as well. So I'm droning up 3 base saturation, where I'm getting to 3 base mineral off of 2 gas. I have a gas in the main and a gas at the natural. The placement of that, it's not super important. But with 2 gases, I'm getting up to 3 base mineral economy. Once I have 3 base mineral economy, I take my 4th and the rest of my gases. And watch me do that. This attacking, it's all just kind of fancy business. There was an opening, so I was striking at them, which is nice, but that won't always happen. So I took all my gases, I'm taking my 4th base, and I'm still making drones. 5 more drones. And a queen to spend my minerals. Spamming queens is a really good way to make yourself very hard to kill. 4 gases in production, so I'm going to be up to 6, and I drop my Spire. So basically the Spire goes down as your gas income is kicking in, because you can't make Mutas until it's done anyway. So now I'm making Lings again. Why am I making Lings? Because I hit my saturation goal. I have 65 drones. It's not perfect. I could have 1 more drone here. I could have 1 more drone here. And that's about it. So 2 more drones. 67 would have been ideal right now before I started making Lings, but it's not a tremendous mistake. We'll watch the production tab. I'm taking Overlord speed. Overseers got a really big buff in their movement speed. I think it was Flash versus Life. We're playing in, what was it, Early Heart of the Swarm. And they had some really classic LingBaneMuta games. And Life was playing really well, but the Overseers just couldn't keep up with how fast his army was. So a few years ago, they buffed Overlord speed quite a bit. And now Overseers go at rocket ship speed, to quote Day 9. So if you're about to make some Mutas, you want to have an Overseer for those Mutas to be able to see mines and stuff. And if you want to have them keep up with the Mutas, you need Overlord speed as well. So I just took it before I started making Mutas as my Spire is building. I'm taking +2 Carapace next. So notice I only have 1 Evo here. I don't have 2 Evos. Mutas cost a lot of gas, so I'm kind of cutting a little bit of a corner in my ground army investment in favor of having the Spire. I'm going for Carapace Upgrade here. This kind of comes down to preference. If you go for the attack upgrade, you can take out objectives faster. Like you could kill a supply depot faster. You could kill an add-on faster. You could kill SCVs faster. If you have Carapace, the Mutas are a little bit more durable, where if you actually do get into a fight, it's more forgiving for the damage they take, and they can trade better in direct fights against other units. Normally, Mutas should be a harassment-only unit, but if you have enough numbers, a lot of times you can fight other army units directly. So now I'm making Mutas. I'm making a bunch of Mutas and a bunch of Lings. Notice my Bane count is 2. Banelings are units that only get 1 opportunity to deal their damage, because they blow up in the event of that happening. So I want to try and spend my gas into Mutas and tech, and then my minerals into Lings, and then only if I need to fight with Banelings do I make a bunch of Banelings. Having a few is good, because that prevents you from just having the Terran walk over you and kill you. But generally speaking, you want to have fewer Banelings and spend more of your gas into Mutas, because Mutas are technically a better unit. They fly, they can attack multiple times, they have this regen ability, tissue regeneration. They regenerate life faster than most Zerg units out of combat. And yeah, decent HP, a nice glaive bouncing attack. Mutas are fantastic units, but they're fragile. So the next key point is, alright, I have my saturation. I have the main base in a macro hatch. I have the natural saturated. I have the third saturated. I have my 4th up and running, and my queens are guarding my newest base. Now what do I do? Well, you get maxed. You make Mutas with your gas, Lings with your minerals. You can tech into Ultra if you want, so adding an infestation pit would be another step. But your attention should be pretty heavily focused on the Mutas, because gas is more precious than minerals in StarCraft. You want to watch your Mutaflock more than you watch this. These units, they're mineral only for the most part. They're very cheap, they're very fast. It's not as dicey. So if you're thinking about your attention split, Mutas are the primary, LingBane army is kind of secondary to that. But I'm just in a race to get maxed. I'll drone my 4th base a little bit. I rallied some queens to inject the main because I realized I pulled my queens away, which is a mistake. So the Lings are attacking here. The Mutas are attacking here. But we see Marines, so we don't go in. A lot of times, if you create 2 opportunities where you attack, the opponent will successfully defend one and fail at the other. So the opponent successfully defended my Mutas in the main with the Marines, but they failed to defend my army on the bottom side. Control groups are super important in this scenario. If I have everything on F2, then the Marines get to all work together, stay clumped up, and fight the LingBaneMuta in unison. Whereas if I have 2 groups, the Mutas are a threat on their own, the LingBane is the threat on his own, so we have 2 opportunities for the opponent to mess up instead of just 1. And then you kind of swing in. This was a very decisive game, but sometimes you would just kill the 3rd and then run home and go into Ultra. Note that the production is the throat of the Terran, meaning that this is their most vital spot. They can lose a base and oftentimes recover, but if they lose their production, their army can't grow at all, and they usually lose the game. So imagine there's a case where they have a 3rd, they have a 4th. I sweep the 3rd, and it's an orbital command. Often it's better to just go for the throat if you have a really big army, instead of fighting a planetary. Fighting planetaries is generally speaking better for the Terran than it is for the attacker. So if I had like an ultra-based army in the late game, I would be more focused on getting into this area and being on top of their production and killing all the new stuff that's coming out. 5th base behind this is important. Keep spreading creep, fill the vision, see the minimap, that kind of deal. But that's kind of basically how LingBaneMuta works. Any questions about that? LingBaneMuta, what is it? Why? What do I do if this happens? If there are a bunch of Thors, you can get Neural Parasite and Burrow and Infestors. What do you do against mech? You can go for some Hydras, or you can go for Swarm Hosts. LingBane Hydra Swarm Host is a very good composition against mech, so that's one option. Neural versus mech can be pretty funny. I think Roach Hydra Viper is probably the most reliable way to play against mech, where you have some Vipers for Blinding Cloud, you have them for Abducts potentially, and Roach Hydra is pretty good at just moving and fighting mech. It's better than Mutas are. If Liberators, do you add Corruptors or go straight to Hive? Why not both? Usually you can defend both. If you have a big economy that is able to produce LingBaneMuta, usually you can afford some Corruptors if you wanted to make that, and a Hive. Mutas are faster than Liberators too, so it can move them more into a harassment role instead of a direct fighting role. Mutas with the armor upgrade can still fight pretty well against Liberators if you get a good spread. Does this work versus Protoss? If not,